We've got a million different distractions. The legislative session this last year was a distraction if you let it become one. And so really limiting our distractions to make sure our time and energy is going towards
different school district with different challenges. How do you take in the lessons which you have from the previous one and implement in the new one when the funding is still an issue?
1 to 3 goals a year, 2 to 3. This year, number one goal is to limit distractions.
Biggest worry with the whole AI was on the front of cheating. Like the kids are going to cheat and they're going to be critically not thinking too much. So they wanted to understand how are you, like a different superintendent thinking of AI. Are they too worried about it? Welcome to the podcast. There is a high stakes political and financial storm gathering over the Texas public school system, set to arrive in full force by 2026. Today, we are talking about school funding, vouchers, and how district leaders are preparing to navigate this turbulent future. We're joined by one of the most respected leaders in the state, Dr. Tim Harkrader, superintendent of the fast growing and highly successful College Station ISD. Dr. Harkrider, thank you for being here. And 25 years in education journey is amazing.
But thank you very much. They seem to be going a lot faster the older I get, but it's been a great ride and still enjoying what I'm doing. So thank you for having me.
We would love to start from your journey itself. How did you end up being in education? What made you passionate about it? And then 13 years of superintendency is like, first, it's unheard of to be there for so long. And the board to keep, putting you back in the place and in the right place. And you've been also nominated for the Superintendent of the Year a few times. You won that award. So just wanted to understand how your journey been and what.
Yeah, definitely not a journey that I had planned. I played college baseball at the University of Texas and was drafted to play for the Anaheim Angels at the time, which is the LA Angels now. I had a 5-year career with the Angels and then had an ankle injury that was misdiagnosed and cut my career short. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. My parents were both in education, and I decided, you know what, I will get into coaching and got into teaching and coaching for about 6 years. And my dad was an administrator, and I moved into an administrative role as an intern for a couple years. And then I was elementary principal for 1 year, middle school principal for 2 years, high school principal for 1 year, and then became superintendent. And so a extremely fast journey climbing up the ladder, not at all what I anticipated. I'm not even going to lie, I wasn't even sure what all a superintendent did by the time I got into that seat, but I've been on a 13-year steep learning curve. Enjoy making a difference in kids' lives and in our staff, and creating an environment where people want to work and people love kids and want to be successful. And I've been blessed to be able to do that in a couple different places, and just love what we do.
Sounds fascinating, specifically from Major League Baseball to coming into education. It must have been quite a change.
It is a different world. The Lord has different plans for you sometimes than we see, but it's funny looking back on my playing career and adversity and things you go to, it prepares you for the steps in this career path that, there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of things to celebrate. There's a lot of hardships, but really maintaining, and I've talked to our staff about this a lot, not riding the highs and lows, trying to stay in the middle. And it's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as you think it is. And so you just ride out in the middle. You try to lead by example and set a good course for your staff.
As you said, right? Like it's never as bad as it seems. That's kind of like the topic that we're dealing with today.
Right. It's as bad as it's been in a while, I will tell you that. But you got to find, light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to school funding in Texas. It's been an argument for the last 100 years. Told our board in a board meeting during the session, it'll be an argument for the next 100 years. I think right now the biggest difference is they're not meeting our minimal needs right now. And I think that's the concern that leaders in Texas have and school board members have long term. It's not a sustainable model. It seems to get worse for us every 2 years when the legislature is back in session. And so looking at the future of public ed in Texas, I think we've got a lot of concerns of what that's going to look like 10 years from now.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what the place we would want to start from is. What do you feel about the current legislation and how is it happening? How do you see it impacting on your day-to-day work?
Yeah, back just to give a quick update, school funding in Texas is extremely complicated. It's also geared around property taxes in Texas. We're one of 15 or maybe 16 states in the United States that fund public ed mostly off of property taxes. And the way we've done that, it's not a sustainable model. Every 2 years, we get some sort of band-aid fix to kick the can down the road. And it's so reliant on property taxes now. We've had our governor and others say we're going to eliminate property taxes in Texas. And, unless they're willing to give 3 times more to public ed, that's going to be an impossible ask. So we'll see how that's going to kind of pass on. We get what we call a basic allotment, which is $6,160 per student. And that number has not changed since 2019, 2020. And it did not change in this last legislative session. And so to get us up inflation wise to 1920 till now, that number would need to be $7,500 per student. And so we're not even close. We got this last session a fixed cost adjustment, as long as some nominal upgrades to special ed and some other funding mechanisms. But when it's all said and done, it's not moving the needle for us to run our day-to-day operations of our school district. Our insurance premiums of loan have increased by 190% since 1920. And so, all these fixed costs that we have with fuel and everything else, we're struggling, but we've got to be smarter with our money as well. And that's what we did this last legislative session, is talk about our issues with our community, but also we've got to be good stewards of the money that we do have. And so we were able to trim a projected $5 million deficit budget down to $2 million this last year. And that was also given a 5% raise to all of our folks that were non-teachers. Teachers got a raise straight from the legislature. And so we wanted to be aggressive with our staff because we've been only able to give a nominal increase, 1 to 2% the last few years, and felt like our staff deserved more than that. And I appreciate our board stepping up. And we're gonna live 2 years at a time with each legislative session and control what we can control when it comes to finances. But I think it starts with being smarter with what we do have, and then advocate for what we think we need.
When you say that you cut down the deficits, what were the steps that you actually ended up taking that helped you do so?
Yeah, the biggest deal is really trimming budgets, from campus budgets all the way across. We had a new CFO, and so we came with a zero-based budget, meaning starting with $0 and build your budget to what you need. And so every department roughly was about 11% cut. The year before, we had to cut budgets about 5 to 8%, depending on where we were. And so, we've had to dig down pretty deep, and we've cut, budget wise about as far as we can, because I think our biggest goal was not to impact programs that support our kids. That's the biggest deal, is we can't impact instruction, we can't impact extracurricular activities. And so we're blessed that most of our organizations have booster clubs that do a great job of supporting our programs and able to fill in the gaps sometimes when our budgets are a little short. So we appreciate our community for stepping up. And that's been the biggest thing of where we are right now. Staffing wise, we've been able to trim some staff members, about 20 plus positions over the last 2 years, just dealing with, and our class sizes are still where we want them to be, and we're not getting outside of that number. But, long term, we're concerned that class sizes are going to have to increase larger to where we want them to increase. That's not fair to our kids. It's not fair to our staff. And that's why we want to make sure we're painting our picture to our community of what challenges that we have each year.
Right now, you managed to trim your budgets. Have you adopted new technology? Does that help in when you reduce your staff size in a different manner? Have you looked at from a specifically with the AI perspective, right? Like a couple of administrative tasks, maybe accounting tasks, or just increasing teachers' number of instructional time so that they have time with the kids versus the time they have to do the administrative tasks that they need to do. Uh,
Yeah,
have
we haven't
you?
used it from an AI perspective. That's something that we're exploring more and more as a district. What's kind of helped us as far as the budget and being able to trim cost. I came from outside the district along with two or three of my cabinet members, and our CFO came outside. So we had a different perspective of budgeting and staffing models that we use that haven't been used in our district before. So we brought just a little bit more structure and a rhyme of reason and a formula of how we're staffing, why we're staffing this way. We had some budgets that honestly were a little inflated compared to other districts that we had worked at. So trimming those, we felt like, we've had programs that operated very well with X amount of dollars per student. And it's just a little new for our staff, but I've been very pleased with our teachers, our directors, coaches have stepped up. They understand that, we're having to make some changes based on things outside of our control, and
Yeah.
it's not impacting them or our students.
What do you think about the education savings accounts and the voucher system and everything else which is being discussed in the political era right now?
Well, I think when we haven't received a basic allotment increase since 1920, and you earmark $1 billion for a voucher program, that's a little head scratching of how we can come up with $1 billion to give away with no strings attached. And I think that's the biggest gripe that we have. I don't have an issue with competition. I mean, we have competition now between private schools, home schools, charter schools, and that's great. And there's those in those areas that do a wonderful job of educating students. Our concern is you're taking public dollars, and we're not on the same playing field. You're not having to take a STAR test. You don't have to have certified teachers. You don't have to have SPED certifications, bilingual certifications. All of these things that are required for us by the Texas Education Agency, you're giving money to different entities. They don't have to do any of that. And so that's the head scratcher for us. If we want to create competition, then why do we have different sets of rules? And I think it goes down plain and simple. The voucher program is a money maker for those in the voucher worlds, those who want to start private schools or charter schools. And public ed, that's a different entity. This is not about making money. This is about educating kids and setting up a bright future, and a bright future for Texas. We have the sixth largest economy in the entire world. And that's not based on majority, 80+% of our students go to public schools. And, it's been a head scratcher for us of why our legislature, in particular our governor, consistently bashes public ed and what we do, yet you cheerlead how great our economy is. Well, they go together. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of, I don't understand why we're not celebrating what our public educators have done in this great state for many, many years versus trying to tear it down.
One of the things which you said, which resonated well with me, is that the laws should be the same for everything. It should be a level playing field. And specifically, if you're not having a level playing field, it becomes extremely difficult on what rubrics are you going to judge on. Because the students are being judged on the standardized testing, no matter which school they come in from, but the schools
Right.
themselves are not being judged on the same things. So how do it's measuring apples and oranges, and how do you do that?
Yeah, no doubt. I think we just have to advertise, and honestly, we're in a position now that, marketing will be a big part of what we do. Certain districts have done that over the years, but I think now in order to compete, you're going to have a marketing budget. There are different options for families when they're moving in. Currently when you move into the Bryan College Station area, you have College Station's a great district. You have Bryan's a great district. You've got three or four private schools that do a good job. You have a church. So you have all of these different options for parents. And I think we have to do a great job of marketing what we offer and telling our story. I had a superintendent tell me at a conference not too long ago, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will, and it's probably not going to be accurate. So we have kind of really put a lot of time and energy into our communications department and game planning, what they're doing, why. We pay a lot of attention to social media. impacts. What platforms do parents look at? What platforms do students look at? And that's the areas that we're targeting to really market the great things that we offer. But we've got to tell that story and make our district attractive to new families coming in or families that have been in College Station and maybe they want to look for another option. We want them to choose us.
For sure. I think telling your story is super important and super relevant. The more you hear about it from different channels, because everyone wants to be aware of it, yet no one is taking those efforts to making sure everyone knows what's happening in a district itself. So, what are the,
Right.
have you actually hired an agency? Do you have someone in-house which you're looking at? Do you have kids who are doing it? There are different ways to tell the story. What is the way that you guys have kind of breaking it down for yourself?
Yeah, really a communication plan from the district down to campuses. We have parents and community members that pay attention to us at the district level, but most parents are very much in tune at the campus level where their kids go to school. And so our campuses also have a targeted plan. This last year, for the first time during the legislative session, we had a newsletter that we sent out every 2 weeks with updates of what's taking place at the legislature. Parents got that email, community members could sign up to be a part of that. We sent that out from the district level as well as the campus level. And then, really doing videos. We do a great job of celebrating our students and what they do, but we've really started last year and going into this year of telling the story of what our staff does at the campus level, what's taking place in our classrooms, what's taking place in our cafeterias, and really kind of showcasing all of the folks that work for us and who all makes it a great district. It's not me. I'm just one person and I'm not the most important person, but every person in our organization has an impact on students in some form or fashion, from our bus drivers to our maintenance crews who keep our, facilities as well as custodial looking well. And I think it's really celebrating our staff, but also touching people and what all that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think so. I think it does boil down to the students and how we show their stories along with the staff. And I think one of the school districts which we were speaking with, they had a very interesting way of doing so. What they did was they would get the high school kids to build TikToks, like they built a club out of it, who would
Right.
manage the whole school's, at least for that campus, right? Like they will manage their campus social media accounts, they would be the ones in charge. And since they're the ones who are also more creative on that front, it gives them an idea
Right.
of what an actual account management would look like if they ended up taking a marketing job. So it kind of tied everything together, which made a lot of sense to me. Uh,
Yeah, we're trying to work with our two high schools for sure, and even middle schools on getting kids more involved in our storytelling because people probably get tired of seeing me and hearing from me. However, they love seeing our kids, or parents love seeing their kids interacting. And I think that's our biggest advocate for public schools in Texas is our parents, community members who went to public schools, and our kids, who show up every day. They love coming to school and may not love every class period, but you know what? They love wrestling, they love choir, band, whatever that is, that niche that gets them motivated to come to school. Having them tell that story to me resonates a lot more than just words on a piece of paper.
For sure. And coming from this to again taking you back to a different topic, which is on the leadership playbook, right?
Right.
Specifically, you came in, you were for a decade, you were a superintendent for a very different school district, doing different things. And then you come to a different school district with different challenges. How do you take in the lessons which you have from the previous one and implement in the new one when the funding is still a issue, when you do not have the
Yeah.
budgets to implement things which you would want to?
Right. Probably the one thing I learned in being in a place for 10 years as superintendent that I didn't have when I started, honestly, is just patience. Things take time. True change takes time. It can't happen overnight. And controlling what we can control. I usually give our team 1 to 3 goals a year, 2 to 3. This year, number one goal is to limit distractions. We've got a million different distractions. The legislative session this last year was a distraction if you let it become one. And so really limiting our distractions to make sure our time and energy is going towards our number one goal, which is student learning. And I think that's been the biggest deal for me. And then coming in and being slow. This was the only job I've ever taken that I was able to come in for an entire year and just evaluate. There wasn't anything particularly on fire that had to be addressed immediately. It was just a year that I could take in, make notes. That's when my patience came in because by Thanksgiving of that first year, I was ready to change several things, but knew that wasn't the right time to do that. And then really building a plan and forming kind of a picture of why we're going to change. This is what we're going to change, and this is why. And that comes with learning curves. We achieved a lot of success the last year and a half on student performance, and I think some of the changes we made helped that, as well as just the buy-in of our staff and administrators of, hey, yeah, let's try this something new. And I appreciate them. It's about kids. It's not about me. It's about working smarter, not harder. And staff's done a wonderful job with that. But I think you learn a lot from different districts, from experiences, and I think teaching a new team to be patient, to be methodical, and to have a plan and stick to it, but also don't be as scared to adjust if it's not working.
So, for the whole year, when you were just waiting it out and making sure that you have everything in place, did you communicate this with the community and the school board? What the plans were? Did you get everyone else onboarded with the same?
Really just kind of me taking notes and updating the board monthly of what I'm seeing, what we think we need to do. One of the biggest things we did was professional learning communities and putting those in place across the entire district. So our first year we had half the campuses were participating, and the next year the other half. And so just building a framework of how do you support that. And so we had to reconstitute several positions into instructional coaches and explained, why we're doing that and what that looks like. And it took some time because some folks didn't understand. And so, there were some learning curves early on. But then, the blessing about doing something new is patience. Go through the hard times, but you don't change the course. You stay there. And then on the back end, when you can have student successes and celebrate those, and then that's where your motivation for your staff comes of, okay, yeah, this is hard work, but it's working. And so it limits their frustrations and they're willing to get in and do the hard work because they're seeing rewards on the other side. And so I've learned, this community was a little different in the community I worked in before. This community, wanted more information and really reached out to get it. And I think I learned more about the more you communicate, the better. And I think early in my career, we communicated pretty well, but looking back, there were steps we could have done more. And that's on me. That's, learning of what our community wants and what they expect. And I think probably they wanted more here because I was the first superintendent that was hired outside of our school system in 16 years. And so people didn't know me. Like, who is this guy? What does he want? What is he trying to do? So I think a lot of it really was that. And, we've embraced that versus pushing back. And I think it's allowed us to get the accurate information out to our community.
And I love the fact that, the amount of work which it required and entailed and the kind of the precision it required for you to look at it and do it. Uh, I'm guessing it would have been equally tough to discuss the legislation and the financial aspects of the same to the community too, right? Like, hey, our budgets are going to be this short, or we're going to be this much in deficit. Are you looking to fulfill those deficits in one way or the other, or how do you look at that piece? Do you look at from a grant? Do you look at to go to church groups or different organizations? What do you look at when there's a deficit in your budgets and you have to manage within your means?
Yeah, I think the biggest deal is we manage within our means. Our communication department last year, we hired an community engagement coordinator that are going out to our local churches and businesses to support campuses. And that's not necessarily financial support. That's just, folks to come up to help tutor, folks to come up to help with lunch duty, just creating community and community support for our schools, for our kids. And, we have a community that education is important. We have one of the largest, I believe, maybe the largest public university in the state of Texas with Texas A&M right here in our backyard. And so education is very important to this community and people want to be involved. And I think that's important for us to get out there to do that. But I think we have to know that we need to live within our means and not always depend on others, especially from the state and being unknown every 2 years of what that's going to look like. We've got to get smarter with how we use our funds and manage we have a fund balance, which is like a savings account, and make sure we're managing that effectively as well. You can't always continue to dip in there and just hope that one day we get bailed out. And so that's where that is a kind of a cat and mouse game, of what we can live with and live without. And I think we're constantly learning how to improve in that area.
Yeah, I think I think every 2 years you will have to do this cat and mouse till the time the legislation goes, as we rightly said, right? Like it's been there for 100 years previously and 100 years future. Like
Right.
they're never going to be happy giving us the money.
Right, exactly. And it'll be interesting. We're exploring different ways to generate more money, and one of those is students. We get paid by students coming to school. Our enrollment has been flat the last couple of years and predicted to be flat for the next 3 to 4. And so we're exploring some options of potentially taking out of district transfers to increase our enrollment, which would increase our funding. And so we're trying to be creative on our end versus sitting back and waiting. I think I don't want to be reactive. We know we've got an issue, and how are we proactive and address that issue? And so we've had conversations with our school board. Our community is aware, and that's something we're going to discuss in more detail this fall to potentially put in place for the 26-27 school year.
So I have, if anyone's listening, like for the people who are listening, right, like for school principals, the board members, or even the parents, they sometimes feel powerless in the whole state dynamics and the legislation and everything else which is happening. And for the parents, it's also about choosing the different school systems and not understanding what are the cons and pros of each of them, right? Because everything
Right.
has a double-edged sword. How do you create a local level champion for those people? How do you think of creating a scenario where they have all the resources that's needed for them to take an informed choice?
Right. I think we're trying to do a really good job of having more communication in meeting types with community members. We've formed a couple different committees this year. One is a community advocacy group that will meet 4 times a year. They're going to help us set the agenda as well of what do they want to learn about? What do they want to be a part of? We also try to make ourselves accessible to any questions of choice. Vouchers go into effect in Texas in the next school year, 26-27. What is that going to look like? Why are we the better option? And I think just really advertising our school district, making ourselves accessible. And I tell you another thing that's probably overlooked, because if you look at the state and you think, well, I'm not going to make a difference. Well, number one, if you don't vote, you're definitely not going to make a difference. And educate yourself on representatives that are running for election. Are they pro public school supporters? What is their stance on public education? What is their stance on vouchers? If it's a incumbent that's coming back, how have they voted in the past? Really educating yourself, and you won't make a difference if you don't vote. And I think that's the biggest deal, is let your voice be heard, but have an educated voice of what that looks like. And we're here to help fill in those gaps, because we live in this all day every day and have a lot of information that we try to share. But sometimes at a setting over coffee or whatever, we had coffee chats last year, about 6 times last year, to address different topics that community members were free to attend. And those sessions were, I think, very informative. They were a good learning opportunity for us to interact and meet more people. And I think that's the biggest deal. We want to create champions for our school district. And so the more people we can inform, the better.
Wow, That definitely makes sense. So I want to end on two different notes. One
Okay.
question is something which the previous person asks us to ask the next person, right? Like, and it's a tradition
Okay.
that we kind of follow. So the person's big biggest worry with the whole AI was on the front of cheating. Like the kids are going to cheat and they're going to be critically not thinking too much. So they wanted to understand how are you, like a different superintendent thinking of AI? Are they too worried about it? Are they putting policies to ban it, or are they embracing it?
Yeah, we're doing a pilot this year with a group of administrators and teachers. We're going to have a person come in, train us on AI and the pros of AI. Yeah, there's always going to be cons. And so we want to look at as a district and as teachers and students of how we can embrace this new technology versus banning it. I think it's you need to work harder, not smarter. And you can't take something that has potentially negative impacts and ignore the positives that it can have. And so we're going to take this year, and honestly, part of this year with the pilot is really to inform, have the right information to inform our parents, our community of what we're doing and why, and give them the data that we find. And that way, it's not, our thought is it's not going to be a scary opportunity. It's going to be an informed opportunity of how we can use this to our benefit. So we're excited about this pilot. I'm excited about what AI can offer us in a positive manner, you know, from teachers planning to everything we do at the district level. There's a lot of positives. And I think we want to be able to be educated on those and then communicate that to our stakeholders.
Amazing. And that actually makes a lot of sense. I think the first step is to educate yourself and the teachers and everyone else involved before we work towards the kids. And
Right.
that's how the right step would look like.
Yeah.
If there you're something extremely hopeful about and what's your biggest fear for the future of public education in Texas?
Probably biggest fear is just the way the structure has been. And if you look at the number of school districts now that are passing deficit budgets, that their fund balance is depleting. Uh, that future looks really scary. We have 1,200 plus school districts right now. The way things are trending, we will not have 1,200 school districts in Texas in 10 years. You know, that number is going to be significantly reduced. And I think that's a question or concern because I know that the track record of public ed in Texas, we've done a great job of educating kids. There's going to be a lot of new for-profit schools that are going to come in that don't have certified teachers. What is that going to look like? And I think that's our biggest fear. You know, we want to advocate for College Station ISD. We will continue to, but we also want to advocate for public ed and our other folks that are in public education. And, you know, to me, we've got to become a united front because I think right now the deck is stacked against us and against what that's going to look like, you know, in the next 10 years. And so we've got to keep fighting.
For the kids?
Absolutely. That's the only thing that matters. And that's why everybody gets into this business in public ed. My parents were in it for over 30 years each, and 25 years in now. So it's personal to me. It's personal. All of my kids, my youngest is 16. She'll graduate in 2 years. My boys were both very successful through public ed. There's so many wonderful stories of the public education and the impact that it's had on families and I want to make sure my grandkids have that opportunity as well.
So what's the biggest hope?
Biggest hope is we'll get people in office that care the way we care. That, you know what, if you want to have choice, then great, but let's take care of everybody. Let's not take care of those that are for profit. Let's do what's best for kids. And I think if we'll get away from money's driving these decisions right now. It's not kids. It's not the future of Texas. Otherwise, these decisions wouldn't be made. So that's our hope is that you'll see the value of public ed, and instead of pushing us to the side, you embrace the success. We have a very diverse state, and we would embrace the success of all of our students, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their economic status. They're kids, and we want them to love to come to school, and we want to create a community where they can be successful for the rest of their life.
That's extremely powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Tim. It was an
A-
absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. It's great meeting you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.